Welcome to the center of the universe and the home of the 18-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts. This is the X's and Argos podcast with Ben Grant and JB.
Welcome to the X's and Argos postgame reaction podcast brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. Ben Grant joined as always by JB. We have got a heck of a game to wrap up. 30-28, the Argos beat the Alouettes. And before we get into any of that, we want to tell you about our title sponsor, Something in the Water Brewing. JB, you had a chance to go down to the watch party today at Something in the Water Brewing. Tell us about it for those of us that were unable to make it for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Went down there, it was a great crowd. Got to talk to some, it's always great to talk to people who listen to the pod and know football so well. So it was great to talk football with some fans of the pod who know their ball. And it was a great vibe. Lots of televisions. Had the projector going. The beer was delicious. The pretzels were delicious. It was a wonderful little spot out of the cold to cheer on the Argos. And yeah, it was great. It was great to be around other Argo fans for the ups and downs of the game. And it just had a really great vibe. I had a great time.
That's awesome. And they are going to be doing something for Grey Cup with the Argos and the Grey Cup. If you didn't get to go today to Something in the Water Brewing, make sure you put in your calendar, Grey Cup Sunday, be down at Something in the Water Brewing. We'll have more details when we do our pregame walkthrough pod later on during the week. So before we get into the recap of the game, I apologize for the lateness of our post-game reaction podcast. We usually are right after the game. Mike Hogan and I had to get on a plane almost immediately. I want to vent a little bit about Dave Naylor and Dwayne Ford, who somehow had a much easier time getting to the plane than we did. Hogan and I, as soon as our wrap-up was done, ran down many flights of stairs, because that's the only way seemingly to get out of the press area at Percival Molson. Ran across the field with our suitcases. We must have looked so ridiculous. Ran all the way down to Sherbrooke, got into a cab and sat in traffic for hours and almost missed our flight. We arrive at the airport, and who's sitting there comfortably, cool as can be, having had a chance to change clothes, are Dwayne Ford and Dave Naylor. I don't know what their secret is, but that
is the young cow and the old bull, for those who know that joke.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm still wearing all my outfit. I still have not had a chance to change, but we wanted to get this pod as soon as we could. But you had to wait for a flight home first. So again, apologies. Great to see so many of our listeners in Montreal too. That was overwhelming. I couldn't believe last night we went to, I think, 4 different stops and just kind of walking around the downtown core. There were Argos fans everywhere we went, which was not something I was expecting. The Argos do travel well for playoff games when they're, and Hamilton especially, there's always a large contingent. This is a commitment to get to Montreal. It was a sellout, so tickets are expensive. And yeah, well done for Argos fans, not only taking over the downtown core Friday night, but their presence was felt at the game. You could hear, it was clear that the Argos had a lot of fans in attendance at the game. So yeah, really awesome to see. I thought that was really cool. And again, just like you, I got to meet a bunch of listeners that I had never met before. So awesome all around. JB, let's get into this game. I guess, first of all, the Argos are in the Grey Cup, and I guess that's the most positive takeaway. They won the East Final. They beat Montreal. They got the revenge from last year when Montreal did this to them. But I think we've got to start with the Chad Kelly injury and give you everything we know at this point. It looked like such a harmless play, but as we're reminded sometimes in tackle football, even the most harmless looking plays can result in a serious injury. Like, what did you see as this was developing? Because I still haven't seen a replay of it. They did not show us replays at all. I saw it live, and I had a pretty good idea what happened just from his reaction, but I didn't actually see the hit.
Yeah, the replay wasn't very clear. Clearly, one of the Montreal defensive linemen lands on his leg. And so well, maybe they broke his ankle, or it's hard to see. It's hard to see um, where the torque was that would break it. Like it didn't look like he had put himself in an awkward position. I'm assuming his cleat got caught in the turf. That's usually how that kind of leg breaking torque happens on turf. But it didn't look like anything very serious, to be honest. On each time, it simply looked like a guy like rolled up on him. But usually, that's fine.
For me, it wasn't the hit at all. It was him trying to get up, and I've seen that before. The combination of the shock that's already kind of set in, and so you don't in that situation, like, you often don't feel the pain. You feel something's wrong. It's almost confusion, and you don't know why your foot won't move.
And
And
then they wrapped him in a blanket when they took him off. You don't wrap people in blankets usually for broken ankles.
oh,
You're not usually dealing with shock with that.
yeah, and I think tibia is what we heard from Dave Naylor, and so I think that's and initially I thought we were looking at like a tib fib, but either way, it's a brutal injury. But yeah, him looking down right away and sort of the confusion on his face, like that to me was like, yeah, I've seen that injury before. Unfortunately, having coached for a long time, we've seen a lot of football injuries, and that's one I've seen more times than I would like to remember. And so right away I thought, and I said that on the air, was like, I think that's a tibia broken. Yeah, that's so obviously Chad Kelly is out for the Grey Cup, but this is a pretty serious injury. This can have a long recovery time. We could be talking about 6 months and more, depending on the severity of it. And hopefully it's a clean break that they're able to pin, and everything goes smoothly as he starts the road to recovery, because that can be no matter what, it's a really serious injury, but it can be an extensive recovery time. So we'll have to see how that goes and what Chad Kelly's recovery time is, because it could, in theory, go into next season. All right, now that we've talked about the injury, can we talk about the different Chads that we saw? Like, he was having trouble.
Did you find anything in the game worth talking about?
There's so many things in this game worth talking about. We had pretty much everything. We had passing touchdowns, we had rushing touchdowns, we had pick sixes, we had a punt return touchdown. There were controversial calls, there were timely penalties, and backup quarterbacks.
That was just the first quarter.
Yeah, it all happened. Let's talk about how that game began. Chad Kelly did not look good to start the game. Missed his first couple passes, threw an interception almost immediately. Let's talk about that interception play, because, again, not having seen a replay of that yet, what it looked like to me is Chad saw, I think, Dejan Brissett open on the far side of the field. What I don't have an explanation for is, why did he throw it to the other side of the field? I thought Chad was loading up to try and throw it across the field to Brissett. He ended up throwing it to nobody in particular. I think it was just Ruffin standing back there, and I couldn't see anyone else around. Where was he going with that ball?
Yeah, I mean, he has done that a couple of times. That just sort of like load up arm punt, kind of out of frustration. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I have to say it was a little unnerving, because that's kind of bad Chad, if you will, where he's throws the ball into double coverage, or is throwing a ball where there's nobody, or he thought he could get the ball somewhere, but he wasn't really set. He was kind of on the move. Yeah, it was very weird. I think the fact that they were able to get the ball back is one of the key moments in the whole ball game, because I think if that turns into a touchdown for Montreal, I think the game is probably very different.
I agree. That could have been catastrophic. What a job and I didn't even see who it was. Who's the DB that the receiver that tracked him down and caused that fumble?
I think it was Polk.
Because I saw a receiver and just a flash of a receiver,
and then I think it was Polk that got to it.
He did the huge sort of chop, and that ball came free, and Kadeem Carey just jumped on it before it went out of bounds. Just a great recovery. And yeah, massive play, because that was down deep inside Toronto's end, and that could easily have resulted in a touchdown, and who knows what's on then. Instead, the defense responds. Benji Franklin with an interception, but I want to give so much credit to Isaac Darkangelo on that. He's the guy that made that first pick, that pick six happen, because he came out just like a bolt of lightning from the middle. And I think that's what caused that ball to end up flying up in the air, and it went right to Franklin, who for the second time in 2 weeks had a pick six. Like Benji Franklin, I know like it takes a few things going right on that play, but he's just in the right place more often than not. Now you go back to the shakiness with which he started the season, and then you compare it to what we've seen over the last 2 weeks. Benji Franklin is one of the main reasons that Toronto's in the position that they're in. He's been a defensive star at times in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean that's not an easy play. You have to be fully alert because you're not the one making the tackle, and then that's kind of a tip play, balls in the air. You're able to catch it. That's not. It seems like it's kind of handed to him, but the alertness and attention to the play that you're not actively participating in is what made that possible. And my imaginary family thanks him for the golden fleeces that we will use through the winter.
Yeah, that's right. This might be the first time ever that one of your big bets has come through. Anything like plus 400 or more. I think that is your first.
It may be my first big swing, I think, bet to come through.
It's funny that was the first thing that went through my mind when Franklin, as soon as he picked it, before he even got to the end zone, I was like, oh my goodness, JB won a bet.
Raining fleeces.
Were you celebrating at something in the water? Did you get up on the table?
It was quiet. I mean, it's not about me, but quietly inside, I was very happy for it.
So Argos are up 7-0 at that point, and then things went south. Let's talk about what Montreal's offense was doing, because to me, this looked really different. I think maybe we can give listeners an interesting perspective on this. You can maybe look at it from a defensive coordinator standpoint. I'll look at it from an offensive coordinator standpoint. What I saw is Montreal had time to work on whatever they want. They've had like 7 or 8 weeks to do whatever they want to in practice, because none of those games matter. And there's some weeks where they just didn't show up, where they got blown out in BC and stuff like that. And you wonder, are these weeks where they were working on something, where they're installing stuff specifically for Toronto, who they had to assume they would meet in the East Final? Because they came in that first half with stuff I hadn't seen before, with things I wasn't expecting, and I'm sure Toronto wasn't expecting either. They were going double tight, 2 backs in the backfield, out of these like heavy power sets that we just haven't seen them use. They were throwing out of that. They were running really effectively out of that. And this is the first time all year I've seen a team confidently run on the Argos. They had 115 yards rushing in that first half. When have the Argos given up that kind of yardage on the ground in one half? But it looked to me like they were completely caught off guard. It is a huge advantage when you as an offense come into a game with stuff that the defense has never seen. And I know I've talked to you before about this. Like you hate it as a defensive coordinator when you don't know what another team does coming into a game.
Yeah, I mean, my list of things, which I've sometimes shared with OCs over the years, is, my list of things that I fear. Number one, with nothing even close, are formations we haven't seen. It's just really difficult. You have rules, but you also really are game planning specifically for what teams like to do. You like to have defenses that are designed to stop their favorite plays. And when they come out in different formations, the guys have to kind of relate back to earlier football rules, if they can remember them, as to, okay, well, what do we do in double tight? What are we going to do when they have these guys in the backfield? There's just a comfort level that you have, that when you know what you're looking at, and there's a speed and a comfort level, and you just don't have that when you don't know what formation you're playing. It is it's a little unnerving, and it slows you down as a defense, because you're not necessarily 100% sure what your responsibilities are when you're in that. So, kudos to Montreal. They clearly came out and were confusing the heck out of Chad in the first half as well. Like, you can see, he just he simply couldn't figure out what he was looking at.
And yeah, both sides of the ball, they seem to do stuff like Montreal did a really good job covering early on. Like they did have a lot of man coverage. Sometimes they were man on the outside and you had zone going on in the middle. It was a combination of really interesting stuff that we haven't seen a lot of. They also had some pressures that I hadn't seen before, where they're sending heat from the outside, sort of zone blitzes that we haven't seen from Montreal as well. So yeah, not only on the offensive side of the ball, where that sort of power run game seemed to come out of nowhere, and Sean Thomas Erlington really being featured as a runner was kind of interesting. But then on the defensive side of the ball, where it was again blitzes you hadn't seen, coverage you hadn't seen, combos you hadn't seen, and it was confusing. Chad Kelly, it was tough.
They loaded the box, a lot of times, on first down, they might have like 5, 6 guys, like defensive linemen. It was, yeah, it's very unusual in Canadian football to have that many linemen, almost a bare front, and it threw them. I mean, it definitely scared them out of running because it's very difficult to run into that many people. I don't care who you are. But yet they weren't able to punish them behind it, which is, I wish we could have gotten more all 24 film, because I couldn't figure what on earth are they running behind this overload. If they pick it up, you should be able to punish this with the pass, but they couldn't. They just it was a traffic jam, and Kelly couldn't identify who to get the ball to, and I guess it just really effective man coverage behind it. But it was hard to figure out how to, because I mean, if you can put a defensive lineman on every offensive lineman and take away the pass, well, that's as it was, like, that's going to be a very effective defense for you.
What I saw a bunch of times was you had the two corners who have been great all season long, really locking up the outside guys well. And then with the halfbacks, they were over top of the number 2, but the linebackers were actually kind of taking away the short stuff. And so the halfbacks were able to play man, but way off, almost like they were being clouded from a slot, but the linebackers were taking away anything short. And then by the time they got further downfield, the halfbacks would pick them up. And then we know that Duquois is a great safety. He came over and broke up a ton of plays just using that speed. I think people forget sometimes how fast he is, but that's what I saw in coverage. And that was giving the Argos a ton of trouble. And it wasn't always backers that would come out. Sometimes you'd get that zone blitz look. It was other guys coming out where backers would be sent instead. And so, yeah, that was giving Toronto a real tough time.
Yeah, and Toronto's offense is not, like, it's not really built for that, right? Like it's not what Kelly likes, and it's not really what the offense is built to do. It's not a 4-yard hook offense. That's not, generally speaking, what it is. And it just felt like, when on that pick, that looked like where they were like, all right, let's just run a little hook here, and then and then turn into a pick. And like, no, forget that. Let's just do what we do and throw the ball deep. And I think that was the smart play. Just stay true to who you are. They're not a pass 4 times for 15-yard team. So do what you do, and they stuck to it. And then eventually Kelly kind of broke the spell by just throwing 50-50 balls out to Coatsy.
And just before we get to the 50-50 balls, let's talk about that interception by Sankey on that hook route you were talking about. What I thought was so clever about that was Montreal was planning that. That was something that they had watched. Like, remember, they've had all the time in the world to study Toronto.
That drop, I mean, that clearly was the hot route that he wanted.
They were setting it up, right? They knew. So they overloaded. So we're just talking about the defense here. So they overloaded the defensive right. You had 3 guys coming off the edge, and they've studied Toronto so much and studied Chad so much. They knew as soon as he sees this, he's going to look for the hot on that side, which Polk's route turned into. So Polk's route, whatever, I don't know what he had assigned, but as soon as he saw those 3 defenders blitz, he just hooked up after like 3 or 4 yards. Sankey from the middle linebacker spot, not cheating in any way, not giving away anything, waited patiently. And as soon as Chad turned his head towards Polk, Sankey took off, and that was the plan from the word go, was to go and undercut that route, that hot route he knew was coming, and he got there just in time and made the pick. That was a sensational job of planning and really well executed by Sankey and those blitzers off the edge. Really, really smart football.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. Like Montreal ate Toronto's lunch in the first half from a planning point of view, but as is often the case with football, usually you can only trick a team for a half.
And that's what was so key about that last drive.
That's right. And the fact that the special teams and the defense picked them up, which we've talked about, that's how this team wins. This team needs all three aspects working together. And their best games have been that this year. And they just felt confident that would be the case, that the defense and the special teams would pick up the offense until the offense got it going.
Let's talk about that last drive of the first half, which was the difference there were so many parts that were the difference in the game. Turnovers were the difference in the game, 6-2. Field goals.
6 turnovers. That's outrageous for Montreal.
There's so many different things that were the difference in this game. But let's look at the 2 passes to Coxie at the end of that first half. So the Argos have the ball and I think I'm just going to find this here just to make sure. But I believe there were about 15 seconds left and the Argos were still on their side of midfield. And let me just confirm that here. Yeah. So with 15 seconds left, Toronto snapped the ball 2nd and 10 on their own 46. Chad Kelly, who hasn't really taken a shot other than that first interception to nobody, he hadn't taken a shot. Coxie got a step on Burns down the sideline, and Kelly put it up for them. It was underthrown, but it was one of those balls that's not necessarily a bad thing because the defender's got his back to Kelly, so it's not going to be picked. And either that's going to end up in a pass interference penalty or Coxie's going to be able to come back to it and make that play. So yes, a perfect throw probably results in Coxie just kind of walking into the end zone, but it wasn't the worst thing. He wants to give his receiver a chance to make a play. Coxie makes a fantastic catch, suddenly comes to life. We hadn't seen Coxie the entire game other than as a blocker, and suddenly there he is with that huge catch. And now this sets up what is such a massive moment in the game. And I don't know that I would have done it the same way. So here's the situation. 8 seconds are on the clock. The Argos are on the 15-yard line, and the ball is going to be blown in. And so that clock is going to start running. If it hits zeros before the play is completed, that's it. It's halftime. 1, would you have called a timeout in that situation? Knowing how valuable timeouts are, would you have called a timeout with 8 seconds left?
Yeah, probably. I would, I thought that was, that was really brilliant by them, that they just felt like, let's go right away. They're not going to be able to fix this. I love it. I love the aggression. That would be the natural thing there, would be called the timeout. Think about, what do we want to do here? Do we want to take a shot? Do we want to just take our points? It's been, especially when the first half had been, so tough for you. But I love the killer instinct. We just scored the special teams touchdown. We're getting the ball to start the second half. We're in the trading touchdown for field goal business. We need a touchdown here. I absolutely love that thinking.
I love it too. I wouldn't have done it, and I would have been wrong. I would have called a timeout. I know how valuable they are. I would have used one there because I want to make sure we can kick that field goal if this isn't in the end zone. And I don't know if you can do that. And of course, it turned out you couldn't have if you end up going with a long ball. That's not the play I thought they'd run either. So they hustle up to the line of scrimmage. Full credit to Coach Dinwiddie and Chad Kelly for having the guts to call that play, to not call a timeout, save the timeout, and to take a shot down the sideline. Like for me, I'm thinking if you're going to run something, first of all, you absolutely have to have that ball snapped by 6 seconds, and you got to throw a bullet to a slot receiver. You're looking for just a seam or a quick inside move, and you're throwing it to them right at the goal line, and the clock will stop with 1 second left. Like that's what I'm thinking. When he dropped back and threw a rainbow down the sideline. I was like, this is the last play. Like, he better come down with this football because this is going to be the last play of the half. It was. What a catch from DeMonte Coxey. A one-handed catch where he pins the ball to his chest as he's in the air, hits the ground, and is able to maintain possession of the football despite hitting the ground from quite a height. And this is a guy that hasn't been able to practice full in a couple of weeks after that injury to his knee against Edmonton. What a moment that was. That is a 7-point swing. If he drops that ball, if he comes down out of bounds, that's a missed opportunity, a massive moment in the game.
I'd love to know if Kelly called a hurry up, like a one-word hurry up call, and was just like, I'm going to go right back to this well. And to their credit, Dinwiddie didn't call timeout to overrule it, or if that was a Dinwiddie call.
I would usually, just in terms of how they work, that would be Dinwiddie on the headset immediately, like, line up. They have time. It's not too rushed because the sticks have to come all the way down the field. So it doesn't have to be snapped in like 5 seconds. They probably had, in terms of real time, they probably had almost 30 seconds between him releasing the football and starting to jog down the field and actually snapping that, because they've got to move the stick screw. They got to set the ball before it all gets blown in. So there is some time. Like, anywhere in there, Dinwiddie could have called a timeout or said over the headset, okay, no, I don't like what we're doing here. Let's just talk this over. And none of that happened. So I think that's coming from Dinwiddie. But it's Chad's decision to throw the ball to Coxey, though.
So that's how you win championships. We talked about trading field goals for touchdowns, and you don't play to lose, you play to win.
And that was such a key moment because Montreal had dominated that first half. Montreal emptied their bag of tricks and they didn't have anything left. That was it. They're double tight, their 2 running back stuff, their strange defenses that Toronto hadn't seen before, their odd coverages, their odd blitzes. They emptied the bag. And you saw the difference in terms of the kind of offense they ran in the second half. That was just Montreal's regular offense all year. They had nothing left. Toronto knew how to adjust to it now. They had time to talk it over, and they had time to fix those problems. So Montreal, that was their opportunity. They dominated the first half. Everything went pretty much according to their plan, and there they were trailing by 5 points going into the locker room. That was such a killer. And Toronto, who couldn't have played worse offensively, was suddenly up 21-15. That play was massive, and it completed the trifecta. You started with a defensive touchdown, special teams touchdown after that, and let's talk about Janarian Grant, and then the offensive touchdown finally, the third strike to put them up 21-15.
That's a special teams mistake by Montreal, I think, to punt to Janarian there in the middle of the field.
Well, so Zima, the punter, had been injured all week. He was struggling with a knee injury. It was to his kicking leg. And it seemed like on that play, something went wrong. It didn't come cleanly off his foot. It was short. Grant came way up for it. And the coverage team kind of huddled in around it. They lost their lanes. They lost their contain. Everybody started bunching. I think they were looking for it to bounce off an Argo because it was a short punt. Grant picked it up, headed to the sideline, and there was nobody there. And Zima on that play was hobbling back to the Montreal bench. And after that, he couldn't kick it full out. Every punt after that, he directionally punted to the side, didn't get much on it because clearly his knee just wasn't 100%. In the second half, this was where it turned to field goals. Liram Haralahu. It was the Liram Haralahu show. 3 more field goals to make 18 for 18 on the season against Montreal. Imagine in 4 games against the Alouettes. That actually brought down his season average. He was averaging 5 field goals a game against Montreal coming into this. Was 15 of 15 in 3 games. 18 of 18 in 4. No one's going to talk about Haralahu as being part of the story. He wasn't the shining star. He wasn't a highlight machine today. He didn't have 8 field goals today. His reliability, 2 points were the difference in this. Any one of those misses, and this is probably an Argos loss. Awesome to have the reliability of Haralahu, and he just quietly went out and scored all their points in the second half.
Yeah, incredible. Like he has been, well worthy of being on the poster, and just money. Every time, just psychologically, those kicks were so huge. they came at points where like Toronto was just trying to hang in there, just trying to stay in the picture. And um, it was a I mean, none of them were, super long or anything, but the the efficiency of it, it was part of the three-phase football game that the Argos needed.
So Harlahu's field goal in the third quarter, his second field goal rather in the third quarter, puts the Argos up 27-16. That was right after Chad Kelly was injured. Chad Kelly's injury came with 36 seconds left, I think, 54 seconds left in the third quarter where he went down. And they tried to draw Montreal, which I thought was so weird because they sent in Arbuckle to try and draw them on a quarterback sneak. Why not send in Dukes in that situation? That's far more believable that you're going to quarterback sneak it. Get Dukes out there to hard count it and see if Montreal will jump. Arbuckle, I just don't think they were buying it, so nobody jumped.
No,
They kicked the field goal. I don't know.
I'm a little weary of that play, to be honest.
I don't mind it because I don't mind going back 5 yards there. They were on the 18. I'm okay with that. Actually, no, it was on to 13 when they were trying to hard count it.
I do think at a certain point, at some point in the season, you got to go, right? I mean, they run that play a lot.
They do, but they do run sneaks as well, and that was a 3rd and 1. So
They should go more. They should go a few. They should go more on that to try and keep defenses at least a little bit, because they just on that one in particular, it was not particularly well run. It didn't look like a team that was about to run a play.
So Montreal, knowing now that Arbuckle is the guy on the other side, they drive down the field. They score a touchdown, 27-22. They missed the 2-point conversion. I don't know why they're going for a 2-point conversion in that situation. It comes up too. You don't chase points. I firmly believe in that. And that was another one of these differences in the game. They missed 2-point conversions. If those are just single points, this is tied at 30. You can't chase points in the CFL. There's so many opportunities for things to happen, for scores to take place. Go for 2 when it is the last touchdown you're planning on scoring in regulation. Other than that, you wait.
And the NFL math card does not have rouges.
Right. That's the thing. You can't go by the American system.
It's a totally different equation because you are able to score 1 point. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I just think you have to look at it different than American football because the rouge changes the equation in such a way that the what you gain with the 2 is not worth what you lose by getting 0.
And then late in the fourth quarter, just under 2 minutes remaining, Fajardo with a touchdown pass to Walter Fletcher, who was just wide open. It was a clever little pick play. Rambo lined up as the only wide receiver to the right side. He had a slant, but his job was just to get in Wyndham McManus's way. He was smart in that he did not hit McManus. He just simply got in his way and then stopped facing Fajardo. McManus had to reroute, and it almost came to a complete stop and could not keep up with Walter Fletcher out of the backfield. He was in man coverage on Walter Fletcher. Just a really simple, but a very well-designed play, knowing they were probably going to see man there. Fletcher waltzes into the end zone. It's 30-28. They go for 2, and Benji Franklin with an interception. And that, again, another one of those plays that is a huge difference maker. If that play goes differently, this is a whole different situation. Massive play from the Toronto defense to stop that 2-point conversion.
Yeah, Montreal was, I talked, statistically, they were not a great red zone team this year, but they were very good in the red zone. I don't know what happened to Toronto on a number of the touchdowns. It looked like they were in man, but the guy who was covering got his eyes lost in the backfield and just simply was not committed to the man coverage. I mean, it certainly seemed that way. Whether maybe they were in a zone and they weren't picking up, but either way, that has to be cleaned up. I mean, those touchdowns were wide open touchdowns.
Well, the McManus one was a well-run pick play.
That's good scouting, but I mean, you have to be aware of that. But I mean, that's still a wide open touchdown. I don't care. Anytime a guy walks into the end zone, you do have to self-scout a little. But I thought I thought the DBs, those Montreal touchdowns, you can't have a guy 20 yards open in the end zone.
But I also want to see McManus run through Rambo on that, like to show the official. Like,
Yeah,
officials got to see
I think
that this
he was
is a pick.
pretty beaten up there.
Yeah, well, I know he left everything he had on that football field, but yeah, that's one where I just want him to make contact so that does draw the flag. But it wasn't an option. You're not going to throw a flag for a pick if there's no contact. And then on the other one that you're talking about, that was Mark Milton in coverage. It was so tough. He had man coverage all the way across the formation, and it's just through traffic too. And so he's trying to weave under and
the Mac
over
touchdown
defenders.
too.
Yeah, the Mac one was tough. That was in cover 0, and Mac had a post route, and he got inside position. It's so tough. If once you let up that inside position, you've got no help in the middle of the field in 0. So it's it's a tough ask.
That's got to get tightened up a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe they don't go 0 down there. Maybe that's not what they do. Maybe they don't go man down there. Maybe they make it look like man in the Grey Cup and then show something different. You're right. They've got to do something else, or they've got to get home
man,
before.
You need to be able to touch the man that you're covering.
Yes, it is very helpful. But again, Montreal ran traffic so well. They ran picks so well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's pretty hard. So under 2 minutes now, Arbuckle gets the ball and he is able to run out the clock. That's the best thing about this. Like in the CFL, 149 left. You can't be conservative. You have to go downfield. They opened with a run for 2 yards. I'm like, oh man, like you can't run again. You can't play this in this situation. You're only up 2. You got to play like, aside from like letting the clock run down all the time, you've got to play like you need a score. You have to play like you desperately need a field goal. Because if you're punting this back, if it's a 2 and out, you're gonna lose this game. And credit on that second down play. It's 2nd and 8 from the Toronto 32. Clock is running at 1:43 now. Arbuckle hit Dave Ungerer on a deep dig route, but 20 yards downfield. Arbuckle was only a 3-man rush. Arbuckle stepped up in the pocket and kind of in motion threw a gorgeous pass. It couldn't have been better placed for Ungerer, who's streaking across the field in fairly tight coverage. Just an absolute dime. When he hit that, as soon as he hit that, I was saying to myself, like, that's it. Like the Argos are going to the Grey Cup.
I mean, it was great play call. Probably Arbuckle throws to Unger more than other guys, at practice. It was look that they needed Arbuckle to come in and make essentially one play, and he did. And
then a little bit of dice roll on the next play. They end up taking a shot deep downfield to Dejan Brissett.
Oh my gosh.
34-yard deep corner route in man coverage. But I got to give full credit to Arbuckle for spotting it. He's looking around. Montreal's sending pressure. He knows, like, hey, heat's coming from everywhere here. What do I got? And before snapping the ball, he looks over. He's like, hold on a second. Dejan Brissett has got Tyrese Beverette in coverage. Beverette, outstanding defensive player. He's the East's representative for Defensive Player of the Year. He earned it. And yet, that's not his wheelhouse right now. He can cover. He is a DB, but he's been playing Will Backer, and that's just not a comfortable situation for him to be in. That is a mismatch given how they've been playing this year and how they've been using Beverette. And Brissett had it. He was open. And Arbuckle makes a good throw. Beverette can't get his head around. He panics and makes heavy contact with Brissett on the sideline. 3 flags come out, 3 different officials throwing flags. There was no question about that. It wasn't even the crowd wasn't like giving anyone a hard time. They're like, yeah, like, what can you say?
Beverette was the only person on earth who thought it was a PI.
And he knew it was PI.
I don't think I wouldn't go so far. He didn't look like he knew.
I think he knew. I think he looked like he wished it hadn't happened that way. But because he knew that was it. That's the season. And then the last thing I want to say, why didn't Arbuckle take up more time before he took those 2 kneel downs?
Yeah.
Like, all he's got to do is back up for 5 seconds and then kneel down. But he took 2 steps back. No one was near him. Montreal had thrown in the towel and he took a knee. And so now you're left with the third down play. And there's still 5 seconds on the clock. And they had to do that super risky play where Arbuckle spins around and throws it backwards to Tavares 20 yards. And Tavares runs in a circle. Like, that could all have been avoided. You've got to know when you get under, as soon as you get to 50 seconds on the clock, you know, okay, this is what we've got to do. We have to chew up 5 seconds between these two snaps. And so that means I got to run around for a couple seconds, go down. And especially if they're not sending anyone. If Montreal's just standing there, just wait. Wait till they get near you and then drop down. So that was unnecessary panic.
Well, I mean, that's what happens when you bring in your backup quarterback, right? I mean, how many, Arbuckle is a veteran, but still in the moment, you're just not thinking. You're not, like you haven't practiced this, you haven't done this, in a while. And even from a coaching point of view, you kind of feel like we're in automatic pilot here. Okay, here we go, victory formation. It doesn't occur to you to be, to go over the kind of key points of victory formation. Don't forget not to take a knee too early. Which often can happen when you play with younger guys. They don't fully get the Canadian, you can't just take a knee right away. You're going to leave time on the clock. And the safety play I thought was smart, but also terrifying.
Yeah. I would almost rather he took a drop and threw it out the back of the end zone, but I don't know. It's
an interesting question. Like, what's better? Is it better for him just to take a 7-foot drop and then just run?
Well, imagine if he throws that over Tavares' head. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's going the wrong direction. That's what I don't like about it. Like, if you drop back 5 steps and throw it through the end zone, at least you're throwing it that way and not back towards your own end. Because if that goes over Tavares' head or off his face.
I think when Coach wakes up tomorrow morning, he's like, I don't think we should run that safety play at the end.
They've run it a couple of times. We've seen that, though. We've seen them run that a few times now. So I don't know. I think they like that play. It makes me nervous.
I think him running around and then throwing it straight up into the air is well, look, who knows? Who knows? You got to trust your quarterback to make a throw. There's, but it was for sure unnecessary with the time that was left.
Let's wrap up with players of the game and plays of the game. Who was your player of the game for this one? We could go a few different directions.
I mean, that's a good question. I thought McManus played fantastic. Obviously, the bar went very quiet when McManus was sitting on the turf. That would have been a game changer. He played superb. And I thought that Coxie played fantastic. Polk played great, but for me, I'm probably going to go with Benji Franklin. The pick six, obviously, to bring me fleeces beyond my dreams and to stop the Montreal onslaught, kind of give the offense a little breathing time when they were trying to figure out what in the heck was going on the field. I thought was massive, especially for controlling that Montreal crowd. To score first and not let that Montreal crowd really get into their cups was massive. And then the pick on the 2-point conversion. I didn't like the 2-point I didn't like either 2-point conversion play for Montreal, and it was kind of a lazy ball thrown up, and Franklin came off his route and picked it and saved the game. I mean, it prevented the game from being tied. It was two crucial plays from a guy who's developed all season.
And you mentioned the McManus going down. I don't know what the TV coverage was like on that, but I saw it differently than the way that you described it in stadium. So what happened? It was a field goal attempt that was coming up. And what I saw was, it looked to me like Toronto sent on their punt return unit. And the punt return unit got there and they realized, this is a field goal. We need field goal block on here. And that's different personnel. And so they started scrambling off, and McManus went to the ground with what looked like cramps, and the whole stadium booed because they could see, like, McManus saw, he's like, we don't have time. They're going to snap this ball. We're going to have too many men on the field. And he dropped to the ground holding his leg Like he was cramping. Like that's how I saw it. Maybe he was legitimately cramping. Maybe that's not what was going on, but that's what I saw, and that's what the fans there saw, and they threw booze down all over McManus.
Yeah, you could hear the booze. Yeah, I mean, look, veteran kind of veteran. That's why veterans win.
And he sold it. Like he sold it. He limped off to the sideline, stretched out on the sideline. But that's what I saw. That's
what you need. You need to have that on your team to win these games.
It's a smart play. It's a savvy play from Winton McManus, and I'm not surprised at all. My player of the game is going to be DeMonte Coxey. He was such a difference maker. You imagine, go back and say, like, we didn't know if he was going to play. He was a game time decision, looked good in pregame warm up. They decided, yep, he's going to be able to go. How does this game end without DeMonte Coxey? If Jake Herslow, not to take anything away from him, he's done everything that was asked of him. One catch, one target for only 4 yards today, but that's because Coxey was playing so many snaps. How does this game end if there is no DeMonte Coxey today? I think there's a really good chance it ends in an Argos loss. So I'm giving him my player of the game, 5 catches on 5 targets, 105 yards, and that first half touchdown at the gun. That's going to do it for me. That was a amazing performance from a guy that couldn't have been 100%. And what's your play of the... Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, I mean, Coxey is their Alouette killer. You know, the same way that Grant from Montreal is an Argos killer. Like, Coxey knows, like, the way Daniel's in Hamilton. It's just something that sometimes you have a guy in the stadium and, you know, they had to know, and I'm sure Montreal was really disappointed when he played because, you know, Coxey just crushes them at Montreal.
In the last 3 years, Coxey has played 4 times in Percival Molson Stadium. He has a touchdown in each game. He has a game winner diving catch. He also has the TSN #1 play of the entire season in that same end zone. And then today at the buzzer, that's going to be in the running for play of the year. One-handed catch with time expiring as he pins it to his body. DeMonte Coxey kills Alouettes.
No, and amazing tribute to his ability, his pain tolerance, his determination to get back in the game, to go from limited. Like if you're limited at practice, that means you are badly hurt. You know, that limited is a big deal, and to go from limited to playing meant that he was his pain threshold was being tested because he would been going through a lot if he were, you know, because he was limited the whole week, and then finally, you know, it was good to go for a game. But I'm sure he'll feel it tomorrow morning.
He will for sure. And just for clarity on that, so you know, listening at home, when you're full in practice, that doesn't mean you're fully healthy. It means you were able to participate throughout the whole practice, but you could still be really banged up and be full. We've seen guys all year long that practice and they're listed as full, but they end up being out game time wise. They weren't available because they're not healthy enough. And so if you're limited, you can't even go full. That's a whole step back. So that's, I mean, if you're
limited, essentially you didn't practice. You were there.
Yeah, you
watched plays, but you did not participate in practice. I mean, largely speaking.
What's your play of the game?
Geez, I mean, I could go back to that interception, you know, to the forced fumble after the interception. I mean, it's between that and the Unger catch for me. Obviously, that was the game-winning play. But you know what? I'm going to go with it. I'm gonna go with the. I've talked myself into it. I'm going to go with. I believe it was Polk who forced the fumble. You know, that old cliche about 5 plays determine every football game, and the game-winning play might come in the first 5 minutes of the first quarter. And I think it does. I think if Montreal turns that interception, which is a bad one and is like every nightmare Chad Kelly may have had about performing in the Eastern Final, and turn that into a touchdown and all those stupid horns get going, I think that's a huge uphill problem that just dissipated immediately. So I'm going to give that as the play of the game.
And I can't believe neither of us are going to go with that Ungerer catch, because that deserves to be play of the game probably.
Well,
but I'm going to go back to
maybe a little on the nose, I guess.
Maybe, and but I don't know if mine's not on the nose. I'm going to go to that Coxie catch at the end of the first half. That's such a big difference maker. That's a 7-point swing with no time remaining. That is massive, and both teams head into the locker room in a totally different frame of mind. You head in losing 16-14 versus you head in winning 21-16. Completely changed the math, completely changed what both teams were going to do in the second half. So that's where I'm going to go with it, but with a heavy shout out to Dave Ungerer and Arbuckle for having the courage to throw it down there, and shouting out Arbuckle in general, who came into a really tough spot and for the second time in a row looked brilliant out there. He has looked sensational since his time in Edmonton. And if there's any time that you're going to feel comfortable with Nick Arbuckle going in and starting a Grey Cup, it's after the two performances we've seen. It's still not ideal. You don't want to be going into a Grey Cup with your backup quarterback, and no one knows more about that than Coach Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie was famous for having to start the Grey Cup after Kevin Glenn went down for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Kevin Glenn went down with no time to prepare. There's Dinwiddie out there for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, getting his first start in a Grey Cup game. And so of all coaches in the CFL, he knows better than anybody what Nick Arbuckle is about to go through over this next week. So it's an ideal situation from that standpoint, I suppose. But yeah, not great to lose one of your best players, one of the league's best players heading into Grey Cup week. Well, that will just about do it for us on this post-game reaction episode. We're going to have a huge episode for you this week as we prepare for the Grey Cup in Vancouver. I believe the Argonauts are flying out Monday to Vancouver so that they can spend their week practicing there. It's in a dome stadium, which I think is a good thing in this matchup against Winnipeg. I think that helps the Argos instead of being in minus 20 degree temperatures or something like that in Saskatchewan or Winnipeg. It was climate controlled in the dome. We're going to talk about all that stuff, what the Argos' chances are with Nick Arbuckle at the helm. So make sure you check out our pregame walkthrough episode midweek. That will do it for us. And for JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe.